All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Spearheading Change Across the Globe, a showcase of ORCID Global Participation Fund awardees. I'm Kimberly Iniger, Events and Outreach Specialist at ORCID. Now, before we get started today, I'd like to bring your attention to some features available during the webinar to enhance your experience. The first is closed captioning and translated captions. These features allow you to enable audio captions and translate those captions into a few different languages. To enable, click on the Show Captions button in your Zoom toolbar. We also have a dedicated Q&A channel, and we invite you to submit your questions throughout the session. To do so, click on the Q&A button in the Zoom toolbar. You can also view questions other attendees have submitted, upvote questions you're interested in, and add comments. We do have some helpful documentation available to assist you in accessing these features, which is available in Resources in the Zoom toolbar. Finally, the session is being recorded and all session materials will be shared after the session. Now, I'm delighted to introduce Lambe Timbo, ORCID Grant Program Officer.
Thank you, Kimberly, and thank you all for joining today's webinar. I'll start with a brief overview of ORCID's Global Participation Program. So ORCID's relatively new Global Participation Fund program, which was launched in 2022 as part of ORCID's Global Participation Program, is basically designed to support equity of access to ORCID, also improving the visibility of researchers and reducing administrative burden on both researchers and also institutions around the world. The next cycle of the GPF is going to run from the 3rd of April to 3rd May 2024. So please look out for that announcement. And the GPP, which is the Global Participation Program, aims to enhance global participation in the ORCID community by providing financial assistance and technical support to organizations that are interested in implementing ORCID, particularly for organizations in low and lower middle income countries. Also, the other part of the Global Participation Program is the Membership Equity Program, and this allows organizations to start an ORCID consortium at discounted fees of either 80% or 50%, depending on whether the organization comes from a low income or lower middle income country, as categorized by the World Bank. There is also a minimum of 3 organizations as opposed to 5 when starting this consortium. So more details can be found on our website, and Kimberly will share a link to this. So I'll get into a brief introduction of our panelists today. I'm joined by these amazing panelists. So the first is Owen Iyoha from Eko Konnect. We are also joined by Ibuka Ezike from AfricArXiv. We're also joined by Sheila Rabin from Lyrasis and Lasith Gunawardena from the University of Sri. So I'll just jump into the questions immediately. So I'll start with you, Sheila. So what made you decide to apply, and what do you hope to improve or gain with your project?
Yeah, so I am involved in the United States ORCID Consortium that already exists. Lyrasis is a nonprofit organization that works with libraries, archives, museums, and other related knowledge communities. So my organization is the administrative home of the United States ORCID Consortium for non-governmental organizations. And so I think about ORCID every day. I work with all of our member organizations to adopt ORCID. And I also work with my counterparts in other countries around the world that also have ORCID consortia. And so in the course of that work, we discovered that some of our members that were using a open source repository software platform called DSpace were experiencing some bugs and some issues with the ORCID functionality within DSpace. So DSpace is, like I mentioned, it's an open source software and it's community driven, and there are organizations all over the world that use it. And because it's open source, there's no one organization or vendor that is responsible for doing the development and improvements on it. It just so happens that my organization, Lyrasis, is also the community home for DSpace, as well as the community home for the ORCID consortium. So in working with other consortia leads in other countries, we identified what some of the issues were, what needed to be improved with the ORCID integration in DSpace. And another challenge of DSpace being an open source software is it relies on either volunteers to do the work to improve it, or we raise funds to pay a contractor to do the work. So in this case, because we had identified a good set of work that needed to be done to improve the ORCID integration with DSpace, and it is used globally all over the world by a lot of institutions, hundreds of institutions. And we knew about the ORCID Global Participation Fund could be a source to get some funding to specifically work on those ORCID improvements in DSpace. We went ahead and applied for the funding, and we just found out last month that we received the funding. So what we're hoping to improve and gain with the project is essentially making it much easier for organizations and researchers to use ORCID if they are using the DSpace software, improving the documentation about that, and also through that, hopefully gaining more engagement and usage of ORCID all over the globe for the institutions that are using DSpace.
That sounds amazing and very relevant. Thank you, Sheila. So the next question is to Lyrasis. How did you learn about the GPF?
So before learning, I would say I started by following keenly the updates from ORCID. I've been a member of the ORAC or ORCID Research Advisory from 2022. But prior to that, I as an academic who's been involved in IT, and also one of my academic mentors, Professor Richard Digritz, was an ORCID board member. So in fact, when I first heard about ORCID, I didn't know how to spell it. I just said ORCID. I didn't know how the term ORCID. So through my involvement with him, I got to know more about ORCID, and I saw the value. And as such, I followed the updates on ORCID. I followed LinkedIn, and I was keenly following and trying to see how I could, how my awareness of ORCID can be improved. And it was an extension of this that I realized that in a country like Sri Lanka, which is a developing country, there is very little awareness of ORCID. Those who do are aware is about the awareness when they want to submit for a journal, the ORCID ID. So beyond that, there was not much awareness of it. But I realized the potential to make more the researcher and academic community in Sri Lanka. There was an opportunity once, and the GPF was launched. I got the updates via the ORCID updates on email and on LinkedIn. So I thought it was a good opportunity for me to consider planning somewhere where we can, where the Sri Lankan community can benefit from the potential of ORCID. So once I heard about it, I thought it was a good opportunity for me to draft a proposal with my colleagues.
That sounds wonderful. We're very glad that you saw the benefits and that you decided to apply. Thank you, Lyrasis. So the next question is for Owen. What kind of team did you pull together to prepare the grant application?
Okay, hello, everyone. Well, to be honest, Lombe, when we heard about the grants and we saw the forms we needed to fill, one of the things that we were quite grateful for was the actual forms themselves were very straightforward in terms of being able to put the proposal together. There were very concise, specific questions that were needed to be answered. So that made our job a whole lot easier. And in addition to that, Eko Konnect, we had been involved in some activity and projects that ORCID was very complementary to. So it became quite straightforward for us to basically plug in the ORCID requirements and narrative to the form. So we're really what we just had a small team of the project, our project manager, tech support lead, and our finance officer who needed to deal more with the budgetary aspects of the proposal. And then the rest was really about looking at existing roadmap activities we had and sort of aligning that with the specific questions of the proposal form itself. So I'd say the team was really, we had a team of 3 people, and it really took us about 2 days to really put everything together and make it ready for submission. But like I said, the proposal form was very well laid out, very easy to fill. So we do thank ORCID for not making it too complicated to fill out the forms and put the proposals together.
Thank you, Owen. I'm really glad to hear that the forms are easy to fill out. The next question is to Ibuka. So what state was your project in at the time of applying?
Okay, thank you, everyone. Like my name is Eko Konnect, like Lumbe said, and it's indeed an honor to be here to join as a member of the panel. So I work with AfricArXiv, and you know, AfricArXiv is a community-led digital archive, which is like a repository for, you know, African research items. And some of these items are like, you know, research manuscripts, you know, presentations, reports, and all. So I would say we are at a stage where we need to like create visibility for, you know, research, you know, items or materials coming out from Africa. So we needed to use, you know, ORCID as a platform to, you know, further boost this visibility of, you know, research materials or research items or research findings from Africa. So we felt, of course, that this ORCID Global Participation Fund will help us in the long way, because it will serve as a platform for us to further create awareness to, you know, researchers and, you know, librarians and institutions in Africa about first what we're doing in AfricArXiv, and then how much their work can be seen in the global, you know, scientific community. So indeed, we at a stage, I would say, where we needed the grant very much to help you know, propel what we are doing at AfricArXiv, and then further increase the visibility of African you know, research findings. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. Lasith, I have another question for you. How did you use the feedback from your first application to adjust for your next submission?
Yes, actually, I think I submitted the first time the GPF was called back in 2022. We submitted a proposal, but at the time there wasn't much of an on retrospect, I felt that it was kind of a hastily done proposal, which didn't was not comprehensive. So as a result, we were not very successful in the first round. However, the feedback that we got from the reviewers was very constructive, and that helped me to and the team to look at how we could make it more winning proposal. So if I look back, some of the aspects that I looked at was, for example, the outcome and the impact of the project. So we felt that it had to be spread to a larger community, and that should be measurable as well. The other was the budget, in which we have to we spent some time to ensure that the budget was more focused to the events and was more transparent and clear that how the spending was being done. And also in terms of the team that we lined up for the as the team. We constituted with a more broader team of our within my institution or my university, plus external contributors who would be collaborating with us as the project progress. So that I felt was essential in ensuring that the project deliverables are harnessed by a wider community. So those three aspects, the budget, the outcomes and the impact, and the team who would be part of the who would be involved in the project itself, were key in ensuring that as feedback we obtained and felt in the second time when we submitted it, those aspects were looked especially with the constructive comments. So that's how we succeeded next time.
I'm so glad to hear that. That was helpful for you. Okay, so I'm going to ask a few questions about the process of receiving funding and also the beginning of the different projects. This question is going to Sheila. So after receiving funding, what were the first steps you took to begin your project?
Yeah, so ultimately we are going to use the funding to pay one or more developers to do the fixes and the improvements that we need to see for ORCID and the DSpace platform. So to get everything ready to do that, some of the first steps that I took were to create kind of a projected timeline for the next year of the different activities and things that would need to take place to make sure that we can complete the project within the given time frame. I also reached out to my counterparts in other countries, so other consortia leads, letting them know that if they have organizations in their country that are using DSpace, that we, are going to be working on this project. And so through that, I kind of put together an informal advisory board with other consortia leads so that they can be involved as we move forward and let all of their organizations know any updates that we have. I also communicated to our own ORCID members and different listservs that might have people who are interested, letting them know about the project and giving them a way to stay up to date with the advancements as we go forward. And the next step that we have coming up is we're going to be sending out a call for proposals to the DSpace community to find a developer or more than one developer to do the work that we actually need to get done. So those are some of the first steps, and so far, so good.
That sounds wonderful. So definitely planning ahead has helped you with this, it seems. So that's wonderful. The next question is for Owen. What roadblocks did you encounter? And was there any unexpected admin or red tape that delayed your project? Also, how did you manage this?
Right. Yes, there were one or two roadblocks. We operate Eko Konnect. We're based in Nigeria, and in 2023 we had our general elections. And for those of you who may not be aware, elections in many African countries are not just a one-day affair. They are hugely they're major projects that literally involve the country being shut down for a number of weeks to minimize any security challenges that occur during elections. So last year, February/March, Nigeria had its general elections, and the government announced that all higher education institutions needed to be closed during that period. So of course that really impacted greatly on our scheduling, because once the universities and institutions reopened, then they were all behind, and they were all rescheduling their academic timetables, and then scheduling the workshops for the librarians and researchers was a little bit of a challenge. That actually resulted in some delays, actually. So we weren't able to complete the project within the stipulated time frame. I think we did ask ORCID for a little bit of extra time to complete our activities. But we tried to reduce the impact by one, running a couple of workshops for the intended targeted institutions that we were to do some capacity building with. So we invited them into some online workshops, one of which we did in collaboration with some of our other grantees, actually. I think with AfricArXiv and the grantees from Côte d'Ivoire. So we did run two online workshops to try to reduce and sensitize the intended institutions that we were to physically go to deal with that. But fortunately, there was a lot of understanding. Eko Konnect is an NREN, that's a National Research and Education Network in Nigeria. So we're quite well known with most institutions. So we were also able to work with the Association of Librarians, who helped us as well with rescheduling and getting key librarians available so we could have some sessions with them, and then also reschedule our capacity building activities in some of the targeted universities. So that's really how we sort of tried to deal with the challenges we had.
Thank you, Owen. I'm glad you were able to navigate those different roadblocks, but I also really appreciate that you communicated all these things along the way. So thank you for that. The next question is for Ibuka. So as your project progressed, were there any exciting milestones or success experienced?
Well, thank you very much, Lumbi, for that question. Of course, I would say there were many, achievements or successes, discovered as a result of the progress of our project. So let me just highlight here that one of the major projects we looked at was a webinar series which we titled Open Science Webinar Series. That's AfricArXiv Open Science Webinar Series. And then the idea behind this webinar series is to, create awareness or enlighten researchers, institutions, and librarians as to the impact of PIDs, of which ORCID is one of. And they attended most of these webinar series, and they gained a lot from what we had to offer to them, because we did this webinar series in connection with a lot of digital service providers, a number of them, and we were actually excited to the fact that a number of the participants actually gave feedback as to how much they've learned during these webinar sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. That sounds exciting. So Lyrasis, this next question is for you. What did your project team look like, and what internal resources did you use?
Yes, so in our case, we had 3 project leads who would be mainly involved in the initiating the activities that we had stipulated in our project. So our project had kind of 3 main areas we were targeting on related to outreach and building a community of practice. So each of the leads had different activities that they would be assigned with. So for example, in my case, I was more involved with visiting different university education and research institutions to convey the value of ORCID. And we had another member who was more involved in trying to analyze how, as researchers, how they had got to know about ORCID, as well as how the value can be increased. On the other hand, we had also project managers who are involved in ensuring that the project is succeeding from according to time. So that was, I think, as important to keep up with the guidelines of the project. So we had certain activities and certain milestones. So to ensure that everything is working according. Of course, we had delays on certain sides to keep up target, but we have been aligning everything so that it doesn't go majorly out of control. And in our case, we had also volunteers, kind of advocates, as we call in our project, ORCID advocates, members from the community who are actually involved in through our project to be involved as a community of practice to take that message. So we've been recruiting such volunteers. If you look at the internal staff, we also had in terms of a project, finance and administration is an important key part. And in our university's case, the internal university staff are responsible, who are from finance, who are responsible for ensuring that the fund is disbursed according to the guidelines with ORCID, as well as our internal financial guidelines. So that part is separately handled by our own finance and admin team. So in addition, we had other external kind of resource persons who are also critical for the project, as we needed to ensure. For example, we try to, in our project, we try to engage with, in Sri Lanka, we have a number of top 2% scientists in the Stanford list. So we use them to kind of act as catalysts to their message. Is important to convey the value of ORCID to the community, because they are respected scientists in their own domains. So that in a sense, we have the internal team of driving the force and managing, and the backend team, plus the connected parties who are essential for our project as we proceed.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very, very relevant. Thank you for explaining that. So in terms of the next few questions I'm going to ask are really about the current project progress. So anyone can jump in with these with the next few questions. So could you tell us about your project progress thus far? Would anyone like to jump in with this one?
I'll have a crack. Like I said, we're slightly behind schedule in Nigeria. But just like some of the other grantees have mentioned, the awareness of ORCID, not so much maybe the awareness of the name. The name was quite well known, but a lot of our researchers and librarians never really knew really what the benefits of an ORCID ID really were. And so in doing our workshops, because part of our project is to run physical ORCID capacity building workshops in a number of university campuses around Nigeria. And so we had an initial target of about 5 universities in the different regions of the country, because Nigeria is quite a large country. So we've actually been able to run the workshops in 3 of the regions. And the idea is that a campus hosts the workshop, and then any of the satellites or universities nearby actually join these workshops. So we've been able to run these workshops in 3 of the regions. We are trying to get 2 done before the end of the month into April. And so maybe from a project activity perspective, that's been part of the progress. And the other thing we've actually been able to do is bring a number of vice chancellors together into what we're calling an open science consortium of vice chancellors. And these vice chancellors are kind of, we'd like to call them progressive vice chancellors. These are vice chancellors who are a bit well aware of open science, open access, and are understanding the importance of persistent identifiers in the promotion of open science. And so we know that a lot of policy and adoption is really dependent on the chief executives or the vice chancellors of institutions to effect policy in the campus. So we're hoping with this consortium, we'll be able to use them to as kind of early adopters in their institutions to encourage others to, adopt paid infrastructure in the promotion of open science. And of course, we're trying to make the importance of ORCID very prevalent in that strategy. So that's been kind of the progress we've been having. I think the other thing I'd like to mention as well is maybe some of the cultural impacts that the awareness and use of ORCID is actually having in Nigeria. Baby steps, still a lot of work to be done. But we found that a lot of researchers and librarians are not really, for one reason or the other, not fully engaged with the global research ecosystem. They feel a little bit isolated from what goes on globally. There are a number of reasons for that, some infrastructure challenges, culture, lack of policy. But what we're finding with the ORCID workshops is librarians and researchers actually understanding how adopting or using an ORCID ID not only raises their profiles, but actually they feel a bit more connected. They feel that, oh, if I properly utilize my ORCID ID, I can actually have further engagement with the global community, with the global research and education ecosystem. So they're starting to see their worth beyond the boundaries of their departments or their universities and beginning to understand how they fit in within the global ecosystem. So we found that quite interesting and progressive.
Thank you, Owen. I think it's also really interesting that you bring in the aspect of cultural impacts and perspectives. I think that's really important for any grant program, especially this one. So thank you, Owen. Would anyone else like to talk to us about their project progress so far?
Yeah, maybe I could add a little bit, Lombe. So I have similar, to a certain extent, I have similar findings as what Owen mentioned in terms of our library and researcher community. In that, probably like in Nigeria, in Sri Lanka, we've also felt that they are maybe a little bit slower paced in terms of what's happening here and the global context. So, for example, through my activities, we've been talking more about this persistent digital identifiers, that is something which has not previous to our engagement has not been so much discussed within the community, and so it has been an eye-opener. In that aspect, I think there's a bit more opportunity for more space in which a vacuum needs to be filled. And so we are gradually trying to fill that within the project. And I mean, that was something which we realized later on and was not a kind of an originally planned, but as with our engagement, we felt that there is definitely a void in terms of the especially library community. And I to a certain extent agree with Owen in that some of the challenges, why that's so is quite similar to maybe Nigeria, and in terms of infrastructure and technical challenges have limited the opportunity for them to grow and in par with what's happening around the world. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very insightful. Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to talk about their project progress? Okay, I can move on to the next question that's still related to current project progress. So how would you say your community has responded to your project or planned project? Sheila, can I call you out because you talked
Sure.
about the
Sure. Yes. So, so we're still in the very beginning stages of our project. Before we applied for the grant, we kind of outlined the work that we were planning to get done, or the improvements that we wanted to make within the DSpace platform for ORCID specifically. So so we already had that planned out. Everyone that I have heard back from after kind of sending out messages saying, hey, we got this grant and we're going to be working on this project, it's been a positive response. I've definitely heard back from several people who are actively using DSpace software at their institution, and they're very interested in staying up to date with what's going on. When it comes to DSpace, some institutions are using earlier versions that don't have the ORCID integration. So really just kind of the latest version or the most recent version has the actual ORCID API integration. And there are workarounds for getting ORCID IDs into previous versions of DSpace. So I think people are, some different organizations are at different stages or getting ready to upgrade their software to the latest version, or looking ahead to do that. So generally, I haven't had any negative responses. Everyone has expressed interest, and that this will be a very good thing that will be helpful, and they want to stay in the loop with the improvements that happen. So it's been a good response so far. As far as the kind of advisory board that we put together with other ORCID consortia leads, we're having our first meeting next week. For that, we have, I want to say, about 12 people representing all different countries, that that have a lot of organizations that are using DSpace because they want to they want to stay interested. So we're meeting next week. So we'll see how that goes, but I think that everyone is excited about it and looking forward to seeing the improvements take place.
Thanks, Sheila. That does sound really exciting. So wishing you the best with that. Would anyone else like to tell us about how their community has responded to their project?
Well, adding to what Sheila mentioned, actually, when it comes to DSpace, usually when with our workshops, we invite librarians and researchers, both for the physical and online workshops. But there's usually a sprinkling of ICT teams from universities in these workshops. And what they are starting to realize, with a lot of the DSpace deployments in Nigeria, DSpace is the prevalent software for institutional repositories, so it's widely used in Nigeria. And DSpace is usually deployed by or installed by the IT guys, and probably not appropriately configured because they don't really understand some of the workflows and requirements of the users that need to sort of interface to DSpace. But I think what they're starting to understand with the IT teams as well, who've been involved in capacity building, is the relationships or integrations between repositories like DSpace and persistent identifiers like ORCID and DOIs. And they're starting to realize, oh, okay, there's a bit more to the deployment of our DSpace repositories than just installing them. There are these APIs that can be utilized to integrate with persistent identifiers. And so the IT team, librarians, they're starting to connect the dots and starting to understand how this all fits together, not just for the promotion of their own research work, but also how the ORCID ID can just sort of how it integrates with everything else, with the metadata, with platforms like journal platforms, repositories. So I think that awareness is starting to make people, both the practitioners and the IT people, realize how important technology like ORCID is.
Thank you, Owen. Yes, that I do agree with that. It's very relevant for this discussion, and I'm glad that you brought out those the different aspects of what's happening in the case of Nigeria. Would anyone else like to jump in to talk about this?
Well, I think I'm the only one left. Okay. For me, I have mentioned previously that one of our projects is the AfricArXiv Open Science, webinar series, and that has been going quite well, like I said earlier. And why I said that is previously when we first started, we had a low number of attendants or participants, but as the webinar series unfolded or went further, there was an increase in the number of participants because we have been sensitizing them as in regards to PIDs, ORCIDs, and a number of other PIDs. So I think the community was indeed sensitized, so to speak, on what we are doing on our webinar series, and I think the feedback was great. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibuka. Lasip, you wanted to say something as well?
Yes. So in terms of engaging with the community and getting feedback, one of the things that we felt was in Sri Lanka, for example, English is widely spoken and it's an official, as a linked language, but then we have two official languages, which is Sinhalese and Tamil. So while most researchers conduct, their research work in English, in terms of driving the value of ORCID, we thought it was important that the message needs to be spread around in local, the national languages. So as a result, we've actually already we've looked at the content that has been created by ORCID as which is available on a license, which it can be freely redistributed. We've taken that content and then added the narration and subtitling in local languages. So it's a kind of an ongoing process. We've actually almost done one, so that the message of ORCID can be communicated not just in English and shared between. So I think that was to make it more inclusive and a more reach for the wider community. And that has so far we've been testing one, and the feedback has been very good in terms of our refinement of the content and the local language version. So we just wanted to get an introduction done in both for the moment. But if there is if there's more feedback in the same direction, we would definitely within the project, we would hope to do more content in a local language, narrated in local language as well. That's what I just want to say.
Thank you so much. And it is very relevant when you talk about the, bringing back this information in local languages. I think it's really important to sort of bring in that aspect of inclusion. And so thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you for that aspect of your project. I have a few more questions on future plans and goals. So I'll send, my next question is for Owen, and it's, what measures will you take or have you taken to ensure that your project is sustainable? Owen, you're still muted.
My apologies. Gosh. Right. So there are a number of things we're doing and looking at to make the project sustainable. First of all, within Eko Konnect, anything we're doing that is related to open science or open access, consultancy, infrastructure deployment, any opportunity we have, we will be advocating and training in ORCID. An example of that has even happened today. This morning, we got a request from a university to come and help them deploy their DSpace repository and do some training on utilization of DSpace. And my team have responded to that and said, that's fine, but we'd like to include some sessions on ORCID training as well. So in everything we do as part of our service provision, we'll be incorporating ORCID into those activities. We are also, like I think I mentioned earlier, we're working with this consortium of open science vice chancellors to promote the use of ORCID as a key identifier that researchers should adopt and use as part of their careers. And so we're actually in discussions with this consortium. We're going to be having a meeting next week where we want to discuss ways that lecturers or new staff who are onboarded into the university need to provide an ORCID ID as part of the information that they provide for their onboarding, and try to have the vice chancellors put an open science policy in their institutions that includes the use of ORCID IDs as a kind of, not totally mandatory, but strongly advised that staff have ORCID IDs, because this will also be used in parts of their work assessments. So that's something that we're trying to work on with the consortium of vice chancellors. I think the other thing two other things we want to do is promote and conduct a number of online digital literacy activities, even for senior librarians and researchers, because we also discovered during the course of this grant that was provided that a lot of the, particularly the older senior researchers and librarians, still have challenges with digital literacy. So they do what many people would find very simple, like, to get an ORCID ID is like a 1-minute process. But you'd be surprised that many senior researchers, librarians feel inhibited about even just getting an ORCID record, just because there's this lack of confidence in using digital tools. So we know that that's something we want to encourage for our senior researchers, so that they don't become blockers for the younger researchers. And then, of course, one of the other things we're doing as well, I think Lyrasis had something similar, is to try to get our younger researchers, or what we call early career researchers, trained so that they can be advocates for the adoption of open science practice and the adoption of ORCID IDs. So we're working a lot with some of the younger researchers to try to make that culture of using persistent identifiers, particularly ORCID records, DOIs, something that we do. As part of our project, coincidentally, Eko Konnect became the consortium lead for DOIs, DataCite DOIs in Nigeria. And so obviously we're trying to onboard institutions to use DataCite DOIs, but in anything we're doing with DOIs, we're trying to encourage the uptake of ORCID IDs as well. And one of the key things we want to do in the next couple of months is actually make a submission to ORCID about setting up a ORCID consortium as well for Nigeria. So we think that with the existing consortium that we're leading, with some of the other PID infrastructure, and hopefully starting a ORCID consortium in Nigeria, hopefully that will happen in Q2. We hope that these will help towards sustainability. And we're also in talks with the major funding agency in Nigeria called TED Fund to see if they can actually, from maybe a strategic perspective, help to with provision of funds for the promotion of these consortia, PID consortia of DOIs and ORCID IDs. So those are part of our sustainability plans.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you, Owen. Really crossing my fingers for that ORCID consortium, among other things. Great. So Sheila, what goals do you have for the future, and what are you planning to do for the next year?
Yes, so first and foremost, getting the development work done that we said we were going to do when we applied for the grant. But beyond that, we also at the same time hope to make improvements to the documentation that exists about how to use ORCID with DSpace and making it more robust so that people who already have ORCID IDs in a previous version of the software can migrate that to a newer version, those kinds of things. And also one of our goals is to get DSpace recertified as a ORCID service provider, certified ORCID service provider, because I know that ORCID recently updated the criteria or the qualifications to be a certified service provider. So that's a lot of what the work that we're trying to get done in DSpace is to meet those criteria so that DSpace can continue to be certified through ORCID. And then aside from that, just also promoting the usage of the ORCID integration in DSpace once all the bugs are fixed and everything is working properly, really working to get the word out to all of the institutions that are using DSpace or thinking about using DSpace, that, you know, how everything works, and to encourage them to actually use the ORCID integration that's built in.
That sounds great, Sheila. Thank you. And the next question is for Ibuka. Do you have any partnerships that resulted as part of the project, and any plans for future partnerships?
Like I said previously, we have been in collaboration with a number of digital services, and one of them is the Lens. So we had guests from the Lens on our webinar series, one of our webinar series sessions. And after the session, there has been this continued relationship between the Lens and AfricArXiv, in that on our platform now we have integrated some of the documents, so to speak, or the materials from the Lens on the AfricArXiv platform. So that is one of the partnership, I would say, we have been able to gain as a result of having these grants. So we've been able to connect with not just the Lens, other digital services that have been on our webinar series. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And last but not least, if I have a final question. Have you connected with other grantees, and have you made connections within the community?
Yeah, so I think as part of the grant sort of tracking process, we have regular monthly meetings with other grant awardees in the same cycle. And that has actually been a very valuable source of inspiration for us to think differently and to also compare, look at what other grantees are also doing and learn from them. Besides that, we had the Slack channel, which also has and the shared content which previous grant awardees on previous cycles have gone through, and that actually helps us to see what has been successful, and to also maybe look at revisits when we have challenges, to look at how better we could do it with others. So I think the inputs gained through the discussions, haven't, for example, I know we've had chat with Owen, for example, and we shared ideas, and that sort of helps us to compare and build on what we already have planned for, which adds value, and it's a community of sharing this knowledge. And that's actually that I think from the grant perspective, that's a very valuable learning, which ensures that the grant, that what we are doing it differently at different countries and regions, but carries the same message across. And that's a very valuable process, which I find in the GPF, that I think makes the grant process and the value for the community as very much. Beyond the other grant awardees who are collaborating locally, we actually are connected as part of this project with the National Young Academy of Sri Lanka, so called the Sri Lankan Academy of Young Scientists, and we are collaborating in them in they have competitions for young scientists in Sri Lanka, and we are collaborating with them to ensure that the awareness of ORCID is tested for in a sort of like a small mini competition form, where they share videos of their own experience of ORCID, and we wanted to value their responses. So we are trying to innovate in that way while we progress, to ensure that broader community is touched. Yes,
Thank you
that's
so
it.
much. That's wonderful. I think it's also great that you've highlighted how all of this is helping to build a community of practice, and this is also feeding into ORCID's goals. So I think these are the only questions that I had. I want to thank the amazing panelists for taking the time to share their experiences and also for showcasing their projects. I do wish you the best as you continue to implement your activities, and I hope that we continue to work well together. And I will now hand over to Kimberly for any questions we might have from the audience before we can wrap up in the next minute.
Yes, so we are at the end of time, and I do want to thank our panelists for joining us today, and thank Lambe for hosting this wonderful session. I'm going to drop a few links in the chat. I invite everyone on the call to join us next week for our community town hall. We've got 2 sessions to accommodate our global audience, and we'd love to see you all there. But yeah, once again, just want to thank everyone for joining us and sharing about your projects. Before we go, Lambe, can you remind us one last time when the next cycle will open?
It's going to open on the 3rd of April, and it's going to run for 1 month, and it will close on the 3rd of May, 2024.
Great, thank you. Hope to see some of the people on the call submit some submissions. And once again, thank you to our panelists. We really appreciate you taking the time to share about your projects with our community. So thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.